Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
And greetings, friends, and welcome to the November 12, 2013 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, the United Nations has launched an appeal for $301 million. For those of you in Europe, that would be, in England, that would be 190 million British pound sterlings, to help relief efforts in typhoon-hit areas of the Philippines. At least 10,000 people are feared to have been killed by Typhoon Haiyan or Typhoon Yolanda, as many of the local Philippine people are calling it. A typhoon which struck the central Philippines on Friday. The UN says more than 11 million people are believed to have been affected by the storm and some 673,000 displaced. Now, the Philippine government, you may be hearing reports with different numbers. You may have heard, well, the Philippine government is only saying 2,500 people have been killed. The UN acknowledges that the Philippine government is saying that, but they say they believe the real figures, when they come out, are going to be closer to 10,000. We have this video report with John Donaldson reporting from Tacloban, one of the worst affected areas as far as it goes with loss and devastation. John Donaldson.
Rain was the last thing people needed here today. After a night of thunderstorms, the homeless and the helpless are doing what they can to put a roof over their heads. In the neighbourhood of Pawing, the cleanup has begun. It may look futile, but people are doing their best to restore some sort of order, remembering what they once had and wondering when help will arrive.
People here are having to help themselves. They're doing whatever they can to try and rebuild their homes and their lives and survive. But the question surely, where do you start? And this is just one block in one neighbourhood in one city.
Everyone here has remarkable stories of how they survived the typhoon.
When our house collapsed, I go into my toilet. I hold my toilet, the toilet, I hold that. I go in there with the wind, yeah.
But the survivors are still vulnerable. Clean water is in short supply. Here they're using a t-shirt to filter out the filth so it can be used to cook with. People here are resilient, determined to get their lives back, but they need help, and soon.
We can survive without these houses. It's okay for us to anywhere, we'll sleep anywhere, but we need food, only food. No money, no places, no televisions, no cell phones, no technologies. Food, we need food.
And to get it, some are increasingly taking matters into their own hands. Another big food warehouse was ransacked here today. As the word got out, hundreds rushed to grab what they could. 5 days after the typhoon struck, people here are still having to help themselves. John Donaldson, BBC News, Tacloban.
Friends, for the survivors of the Philippine Typhoon Haiyan or Typhoon Yolanda, the biggest problem, as you're hearing in these reports, is food. And that makes the story relate to the third seal as well as the fourth seal. The third seal, let's bring our chart up. The third seal, if you count three over, see the three, it's got the black bar there with the word black. That depicts the black horse of Revelation 6 that Jesus Christ described in plain language as a horse of famine. They're experiencing that problem in the Philippines temporarily, hopefully just temporarily, while the Red Cross and others try to get food into the area for the survivors in this still devastated, in this very much devastated situation. And of course, the typhoon relates to the fourth seal, which Revelation describes as a pale horse, depicts as a pale horse, whose rider is named Death, alongside whom Hades, hell, the grave, rides. And the grave has certainly taken a huge, incredibly, almost unbelievable number of lives in the Philippines. And Jesus Christ described the activities of this horse in plain language with three different words as the gospel writers wrote it up. One of the words Christ used to describe this horse was loimos, meaning disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt. And the disease epidemics, that's also becoming a problem because of all the water, as we heard in the report yesterday. And Christ also described the activities of this horse as seismos, seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, and this typhoon certainly fits in that category. And Christ also used the word tarake, as Mark wrote it up in Mark 13, verse 8, meaning trouble. Not the mega trouble, not the great tribulation trouble that comes in the next seal, number 5, but the third and fourth seal, when these things become more intense and more accelerated, as they certainly are right now, I tell you, friends, we really ought to have our antennas up, because the fifth seal follows on the heels of the third and fourth seal. Especially, Mr. Armstrong told us to be watching. The next things that happen would be major things happening from these third and fourth seals, and then the fifth seal. I've got more video for you. This next one, the BBC's Rupert Wingfield Hayes reports from Tacloban, where heavy rain has made conditions more difficult for the survivors of the typhoon. You'll see him in the reporting in the rainwaters, where hundreds of people have been lining up or queuing in water-logged streets waiting for food. Among them are a group of hungry children.
It has been raining here overnight. We've had torrential downpours, and you can see the result here. Everything is now swamped in this stinking black water, and there's more rain coming. The fact is that maybe 80 to 90% of the buildings along the coast here have lost their roofs. So even where the buildings have survived, people are effectively living in the open in all this rain. Then, of course, the other big thing now is food. Look at this line. This line stretches for hundreds of meters in both directions. Everybody lining up here pretty patiently. Just going to talk to some of them. Hello there. How are you? So what are you waiting? What are you doing here? You're waiting for rice.
Yes.
Are you hungry?
Yes.
Do you have any food? No food. When did you eat? Did you eat today?
Yes.
You ate today, yes?
No food.
This is the really big issue now here, is people lost all of their food, all their rice was damaged in the storm. It's now the 5th day since the storm. Supplies are running out. You can see the result. There's still a sense that aid is not getting in here. At the airport there are planes coming in, but we don't see any of it here. The situation is becoming more and more tense, more and more hunger. People are getting increasingly desperate.
Friends, I have this video just in that says supplies are being sent from a Red Cross depot near Bristol in England to aid the work following the devastation caused by the Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. Again, the reports are saying, at least, even though the Philippine government is only reporting that 2,500 people have died, This video report also says at least 10,000 people are feared to have been killed, and thousands of survivors desperately require aid. Supply kits, including giant inflatable tents and high-energy foods, will support rescue workers coordinating aid distribution on the ground. The depot is also sending power generators, wheelbarrows. Well, you'll hear him. He'll tell you and spare tires to ensure the goods are able to be moved to where they're needed. They're even going to send over that big old forklift that they're using to load the plane. They'll then stick that on the plane and take that so they can easily unload and get the material distributed around. The kits capable of providing full support for a month are due to arrive in Manila on Thursday. Now, in this next report, BBC West of England correspondent John Kay will explain what all they're doing.
Yeah, this is basically all the kit that the rescue workers, the aid workers are going to need to do their job. This is a Red Cross warehouse and distribution centre, quite close to the M4 motorway, just outside Bristol. And the idea is that in the next hour or so, all this stuff will be put on a big lorry. That lorry will go to Stansted Airport. From Stansted, they will charter a plane and get this out to the Philippines so that the rescue workers, the volunteers who are out there can start to build an infrastructure, if you like, to coordinate their response. Look at the kind of stuff that we're talking about on here, these giant emergency inflatable tents all packed away in these luminous containers. They're all ready to go. Even the forklift here, which will be used to load up the lorry, and then the forklift itself will also be loaded up, and that will be going out to the Philippines so that they can transport the crates and boxes and bags of kit around to try to get the response and the aid out quickly enough. Here there are snacks and bits of food for some of the aid workers who will be out there. Look, things like pasta, high energy products, because they're going to be working for hours at a time, for days on end, trying to work. John Cunningham here is the warehouse manager. John, you're coordinating getting all this out very soon. Talk what's in these boxes. Talk me through it. Show us.
We've got kitchen sets. We've got 4 members out in the field, and basically we need to take care of them so that they can perform and do their job. So we actually supply everything that they're going to need, giving them a safe working environment, so stopping people coming into where actually they're working.
So in here we've got things like this high visibility stuff, barriers.
Yes, it's just barriers, fencing to keep people out and give them a safe working environment. And then things like the kitchen sets, administration kits and then things like that to be able to get on and get their job done.
I've seen power generators and tyres and sanitation kits, everything you can think of. I mean, wheelbarrows, I mean, you name it, you've had to think about it.
Yes, we're sending teams in there, and actually they've got to be self-sufficient. Looking at the disaster, there's nothing available on the ground, so we actually send them in with everything that they're going to need to be able to work for a month and maybe in excess of that, and be self-sufficient.
So this is the stuff for the aid workers. I know what a lot of people at home are thinking about is, what about the people of the Philippines? Where is the blankets and the food? Where is that kind of stuff coming from?
We have relief items strategically placed throughout the world. Actually in Kuala Lumpur we've got a regional logistics unit, and we store emergency items there. So there'll be tents and things like that which will be sent from Kuala Lumpur. Distances is not that far, and response will be immediate from there.
So this stuff goes to Stansted today, and then when could this container, these barriers, the bikes, the forklift, when will that be on the ground in the Philippines?
We're hoping on Thursday morning that it'll be departing, and hopefully we'll be there possibly that evening in Manila in the first phase, and then from there, after they've had all their assessments done, maybe deployed to different parts of the country.
OK, John Cunningham from the British Red Cross, thank you for having us this morning. As you see, work goes on, and they're waiting for the truck, which should be here in the next few minutes or so. Back.
Okay, that's a little bit of encouraging news. Friends, some video that was released by NASA on Sunday that they were able to film or record when the typhoon hit on Friday, on November 9. They've released it showing images of Typhoon Haiyan as it hit the Philippines Friday. The Philippine President Benigno Aquino has declared a state of national calamity to speed relief efforts for victims of the Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. This footage is courtesy of NASA.
Taken yesterday by cameras on board the space station on the exterior of the station. Haiyan is being called one of the most powerful storms ever recorded, and it hit the Philippines on Friday as a Category 5 storm. Its winds are estimated to be about 195 miles per hour, which breaks the previous record of 190 miles per hour for Hurricane Camille in 1969.
And we've got some other video footage that a videographer took at the Lake Park Resort. This is videographer Jim Eds, excuse me, who traveled to the city in order to track the storm. He told the BBC, "Yeah, I was scared, but if you can get out of the wind, you're okay," he said.
As I went out there to film the storm ramping up, it came up very suddenly. I got pinned in. Coconuts were dropping from the trees. A batch of 3 dropped in front of me, and one rolled over my leg, and the other one rolled over the edge. So I said, well, it's time to get out of here. So I went behind a villa over there by the pool. The wind dramatically shifted direction, and it was a lot more intense. It was a good shot of the wind blowing across the pool and the water going up in the air. The wind picked up a lot more. I jumped in the water because I felt like I was safer there. And then the wind picked up even more, so I said, it's time to get out of here and get back into the resort. Yeah, I was scared because I was pinned in. I couldn't get back to the lobby. As it was, all the furniture was getting blown around up and down the floors, and it was just piled on the steps. Nobody could get around. The concrete, the floor tile was super slick. I ran, and I got down real low, and I ran to the safety of the protection of the building. If you can get out of the wind, you're okay. After the wind started coming down, I went down to my right about 300 meters, and I counted 12 people had washed up on shore. That was pretty tough. If I can go in there and get some really strong footage, maybe people will see that and say, hey, this is what's coming, or this is what could be coming. What do I need to do? You know, I need to take this seriously. And like I say, 1 out of 3 times I can go and I can get some unique footage.
Well, friends, while efforts are being made to help the Filipino people, and after this extremely devastating thing there, which some people will call an act of God, but this is a time. Let me put our chart up on the screen for a moment before we go to the next story to illustrate something. You notice at the top of our chart, it says, if we're not cutting it off too much, if you can read that, it says the days of man and Satan for the first 6 seals, which includes even the Great Tribulation. Even that is part of the days of Satan, the days of man and Satan, the 6,000 years that God has allotted man after man cut himself off from God when Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. And let me put an extended chart up here that includes the 7th seal that's discussed in other parts of Revelation. And you'll notice at the top of it, we have it headed the Day of the Lord. Now, this is a time of great punishment that God pours out. But backing up to the 5th seal and to the 3rd and the 4th seal, these are, even though God prophesied that these things would happen before the first 4 seals would happen before the Great Tribulation, then it would happen, then there would be heavenly signs to warn that the next seal is on the way, is coming, the 7th seal, the Day of the Lord. So the things that are happening now, even though they happen at the hand of the god of this world, the god of this world is that old serpent, that dragon, that old serpent of old, Lucifer, whose name was changed to Satan. He is the god of this world who knows how. We saw a video yesterday explaining scientifically how why this particular one could have such force. This typhoon could have such power and force behind it. And Satan knows how to whip those things up. He knows the condition, and when God doesn't restrain him, when God doesn't intervene and protect a people or a country, and when things are getting closer to the Great Tribulation, God is going to let these things go more and more and allow Satan to have, some people are going to say, well, hey, this was just a natural circumstance, and it scientifically can be explained how it all whipped up and all just as we saw in yesterday's video. If you missed that, go back and watch that. It's a very well done scientific explanation in a BBC virtual studio. Explains it very well. But there is a god of this world who is behind a lot of that, and when God says he can do it, because God wants these wants to allow, Satan will do it. Satan will gladly kick in and do his part of destruction, but God is now saying, I'm going to allow it, that this, and this is what he knew Satan would do when he made these prophecies. But he uses it for a sign for us, to tell us, you better pull your act together if you're a little bit lacking and you don't want to be left behind. I'm speaking to some of you who know what I'm saying about God's promise through Christ in Matthew that you may be accounted worthy to escape the trouble, the mega trouble to come, the great tribulation trouble. Friends, I've got another story or two to cover. While all this is going on in the Philippines, all this devastation, the grief in Syria continues. There's been a mortar attack in Damascus that killed some children and a bus driver. 4 children and their school bus driver have been buried in Syria after 2 mortars struck Damascus yesterday. The shells fell on a mainly Christian area. The center of Damascus, which previously had been relatively safe, is experiencing a growing number of attacks. BBC Chief International Correspondent Lise Doucet has this report from the Syrian capital, and you'll hear it begin with an announcement that this report contains some images which some viewers may find disturbing.
The following report contains some disturbing images.
A mother's grief fills the largest morgue in Damascus. Samira's son Rafid drove the school bus. He died on the spot when the mortar landed. I don't recognize him, she wails. His face is gone. He has no eyes. And in this morgue, 4 children, including 8-year-old Vanessa. Her uncle Antun has come for her body. She was a pure angel, he says, in 4th grade. She loved school and cried when she couldn't go. Grief isn't private here anymore, not when both sides accuse the other of taking the lives of the most innocent. Another uncle says his last goodbye. Stand up, my nephew. This is for you, Syria. They bring out the white coffins one by one. Vanessa makes her last trip to her Armenian church. This is one of Syria's many Christian faiths. They gather in the old city to celebrate her life in Arab tradition. This boy mourns his friend, supported by his mother, who's devastated, like so many here.
What did they do to die like this? Like some bums, dirty people. Please tell America, please tell Britain, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they are bad people.
A community comes together again to mourn, but as grief grows, so does anger on both sides of this conflict, both sides blaming the other. So as this war drags on, it becomes ever more difficult to bring Syrians together again.
Vanessa's coffin lies next to that of 6-year-old Chovanes. There's some comfort in these rituals, but in this city now, nowhere feels safe. Lise Doucette, BBC News, Damascus.
And friends, I don't have a video on it, but I have a report in that says the United Nations has sent another 14 tons of aid supplies to the Philippines to help ease the widespread devastation caused by Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. A plane carrying support equipment left the UN depot at Subang Airport in Kuala Lumpur earlier today. That's it for this Tuesday night edition of Nightcast, friends. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow night, Wednesday evening, with more of the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy. Thanks for joining me tonight. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.